was recalling a memory I had. I was probably about between 12 and 14. And I was in the temple, the synagogue that my family would go to, in the office with the senior rabbi, and he just said something that for some reason lodged in my memory. And I don't remember his explanation. I do remember my reaction to it. But he said, you should be concerned about what others think about you. Or it might have been what others think of you. And I do remember kind of walking out of the office, and my mother was with me, and I said, that doesn't make any sense. Like, I mean, why should you care about that? Isn't the idea, you really shouldn't care about what others think about you? Because if you're concerned with that, then you're conforming, or you're sort of a slave to what everybody is expressing towards you, or what you are guessing they're thinking about you, whatever it is. It's like a concern around self-importance. Unfortunately, I don't remember what my mother also explained to me. But that it's interesting to me that memory stuck with me, and it's something I've thought of, because at the time I think there was a more narrow view of that, a narrow view of my concept of really just like, well, it doesn't matter whether other people think. I didn't actually open it up to how it could imply compassion or a sense of carrying around how other people pick up on your good behaviors or your unwholesome behaviors, and that can influence other people. To me, it was more a concern, the sense that, like, I'm afraid of what other people would think of me. And I think, that's quite a prevalent thing for many of us. There's it can be kind of the first thing when you meet someone, that can be the first thing that comes to mind. We think of making a good impression. And sometimes we're nervous, or we're fearful that we'll be judged by others. And this can be carried around for quite a long time. In many people's lives, this is just a very common experience. And later, when I think I was a samaner, I was a novice monk, I was at a lay supporter's house, and there was a monk who was there, who was visiting, and I was there with I think it was Ajahn Cunda. This other monk was I think it was Lumpur Jimnian's main student. I can't remember his name right now. And if you know Lumpur Jimnian, he's quite an eccentric monk, and so his student was also fairly eccentric. He had a staff, and he was kind of hitting people over the head with it, but not in a violent way or anything, just kind of giving them blessings and this and that. I guess he was touching them on the head with it. And but he asked me, what I was doing in the holy life, what was my experience like, and I gave he asked me if I was going to continue on to be a bhikkhu, or if I was an anagarika at the time. I just can't remember, to to become a novice monk. And so I said I didn't know, I wasn't sure. And so I think I remember a short time passed, and then he said to me, well, you can go or you can stay, but you can't do both. I thought, well, that's kind of obvious, isn't it? But that's something that I've also reflected on for a long time. And he also said, when you're drawing like a tiger, you make a drawing of a tiger, and you're a monk. Some people will look at that tiger and they'll say, "Oh, that's a very beautiful tiger," and others will say, "That's quite an ugly tiger." And he said, "Your job is to make everyone think that it's a beautiful tiger." And that also struck me. Similarly, in the way that I felt when the rabbi, the senior rabbi, had said that I should be concerned with what others think of me. But when someone gives you advice, I think it's very helpful to reflect on it. You might not either respect the person or you might not understand what they're trying to say to you. But as I mentioned in another talk before, it's important that we do treat what others say to us like a gem, like something that's very precious. If there's advice given. Even if it's advice that it's quite painful to hear, but also advice that is not wholesome. Someone might say something accusing us or being aggressive or something, but that's also a reflection, because that's a way to see that that everything, as Ajahn Chah said, is teaching us. The Dhamma is arising in that moment. So I've just in reflecting on those teachings, I just have remembered those for years, and one of the senses around the tiger was around to think of sila, to think of how it is that we conduct ourselves, and that we do have a responsibility in terms of creating a wholesome sense of what it is that we're doing, a wholesome means, wholesome activities that we are engaging in. And that creates a way for others to not just be inspired, but to follow. And in following, then you can create harmony in the place where you live. And then in creating harmony in the place that you live, then you find that you can also create harmony within your own heart. So it's a sort of a reciprocal teaching or a reciprocal way of thinking about what it is that we do that's good. So it just keeps coming back to us. So in the monastery, there's often can be a very high level of doing good. There's often just constantly acts of goodness occurring, because that's what we're encouraged to do. What the Buddha encouraged us to do, and how much that really helps our minds. And so kind of moving away from that independent thinking that I remember feeling when I was quite young, and the rabbi had suggested that I should be concerned about how others essentially perceive me, and seeing that, oh yeah, why would we want to create harm in other people's minds just based on our own behavior? And so this is something I've definitely struggled with as a monk, because it takes a in my own experience, it takes a long time to work with greed, hatred, and delusion, and they arise in situations that, they arise, in my experience, all the time. And so, as they're coming up, they can be acted out in body, speech, or mind, and what's usually seen is in body and speech, and that can be uninspiring if it's unwholesome. If we move in that unwholesome direction. And one of the things that I remember Ajahn Amaro speaking about, Propasno as well, it was this sort of the weasel mind. And Ajahn Kovilo used to talk about that a fair amount as well. And that sense of, if we're watching very clearly our own motives and what it is that we're doing, there's often this sense of kind of how we think, how the sense or the sign of what a weasel is when we talk about it with a person, someone who's kind of trying to get away with something that isn't so helpful for themselves or others, and it's something maybe they're being unfair, or they're taking something more than they should, or not being concerned with others. And the tendency I've seen in my own mind, for example, is just that this kind of getting what I want, or having some sort of control in a situation, or whatever it might be, it can come up, and it's interesting how convincing it is. The sense that there's like an excuse that can be made, or, well, it's okay. There's enough of this particular food, or there's enough of this particular thing that I want, and then you might take more. I always really enjoy that example of, if you have 2 apples and you decide to share one with your friend, do you keep the bigger apple or the one that you like more? And so it's just it's important that how we're kind of examining our own behavior, our conduct, just keeps being examined over and over again, and we're able to see that weasel mind, see that kind of sense of doing something that we know isn't going to benefit ourselves or others in the long term. But in the short term, you say, well, it'll feel pleasant, or it's something that I want right now. So we ignore that long-term effect that it might have, either on others or on ourselves. Because each time, of course, that we move with that liking, or our preference to have something that's based on something, getting something, greed, desire, then it just keeps undermining our future possibilities of being released from that very desire. And that is, of course, what's causing us dukkha. But the weasel mind, or we can say a mind bound by Mara, sort of that sense of being deluded and not seeing clearly, it can so easily slip in that we can be quite unaware of it, and we can get very used to our excuses, and unfortunately there can be such delusion around it that it gets into sort of lying to ourselves, where we don't see that the choices we're making are they're not only we're not seeing that they're not good for us, but we're believing that what we tell ourselves, that I should get that, or what who I want to get away from, or whatever it is that I don't want, that's good, that'll be good for me, that'll help me out. I remember, making certain determinations around food, or determinations around things that I would allow myself to have something pleasant as long as I denied myself at a certain point something else. So a couple days a week I wouldn't do this, but the other days a week I would. And the Buddha actually points that out in the suttas. He talks about ascetics who are, they say they won't eat for 10 days. But then he says, but when they do eat, do they gorge themselves? And, well, yeah, they do. And so that the Buddha was constantly pointing towards that middle way. And that middle way is kind of constantly seeing how it is that we're deluding ourselves and what it is that we're following. One of the long-term guests here was talking about, I overheard him speaking about how he would get rides up the hill in the truck, and he'd get into the truck with the other monks, and then he noticed that another one of the long-term residents was just staying behind until at the very end he would get in and with everyone else and stay at the back of the truck. And if one's just visiting the monastery, then it's very easy to come to the conclusion, as he did, that, well, that's because he's the first one out. But then it came to light that, oh, this was just a courtesy that was being made, and it just wasn't being seen because sometimes we just, our minds see in a particular way, and then we don't allow ourselves to see the potential other side of something. And so it's important also to see that sometimes we don't even recognize the beautiful behavior in others. So I remember, there was something that Ajahn Amaro and Lumpur Pasano, I think it was more Ajahn Amaro who would talk about this, but he would come into the kitchen every now and again, and he would say to the people making the meal, or if he came in, usually it was around dishwashing, he'd say there's no grazing allowed in the monastery, which was a pretty funny, cows graze, but we don't graze here. And he was pointing to the fact that, either you get your food and you put it in your bowl, as the monks do when we go through the line. We're not allowed to eat as we're walking through the line. And then you go find a place and you sit down and you eat your food. And if you want, you can come back. Not the monks can't do that, but the lay residents can. And then you get some more food and you go and sit down again. But you don't actually eat the food off the table, or you don't just eat it, stand around the table, talking and eating. And it's interesting because that might just be a normal thing that's done in one's house. But then in a monastery, we're trying to kind of curb that behavior around how it is that we just kind of hang out. We're not being mindful. We're not really caring. We're just sort of enjoying the food, enjoying the talk, and not really being aware of what's actually happening in the moment. And yet, if we pay attention, there might be other people who are not doing that. And again, I think that's a part of our minds that willfully ignore maybe that sort of beautiful behavior of others, because it is more pleasant just sitting around eating food off a table and talking. There's not so much dukkha we have to deal with, or we don't put in the effort of watching our minds, which can be a difficult practice, especially when we're eating. There's a tendency not to want to actually look at one's mind when there's a lot of pleasantness that one's experienced. Just get more and more pleasant experience. So that coming back to that example of everybody seeing the tiger as beautiful, it is a very much a sense of being careful and cautious around our behavior. Of actually being concerned about not what others think about who I am, but concerned about what others are taking in terms of what they see as wholesome and what they can see as inspiring. And I say this as someone who struggles with this quite a bit. But it's a good struggle. It's a good thing to keep working on. So I'm just thinking of the chant we just did, which was 10 subjects for frequent recollection. One of them here is, I should strive to abandon my former habits. This should be reflected upon again and again by one who has gone forth. And then the other one is, does regret over my conduct arise in my mind? And then the next one is, could my spiritual companions find fault with my conduct? And the last one is, has my practice borne fruit with freedom or insight, so that at the end of my life I need not feel ashamed when questioned by my spiritual companions? So there seems to be a fair amount of concern for others and our habits and our faults. And one could take what I'm saying as a way of feeling either guilty or remorseful, negative, but it's not that way. I think it's something that one can say, oh, this is really helpful. There's a chance to be beautiful. There's a chance to make your tiger beautiful to everyone, and you get that chance every moment. It's not that you if you're creating a self around this, for example, you would think, well, I just don't have beautiful behavior, so it's not possible for me to really create harmony or help others who I live with. But yeah, that would be a sad conclusion, or from what I'm trying to say. It's more that every opportunity we have, there is an opportunity in every moment that we have. Towards wholesome behavior, towards good conduct. But in order to see that, we have to put some effort into looking into our own minds, to seeing where that weasel kind of shows up and convinces us that, well, getting what I want right now is much better than kind of worrying about how I look or other people take in my behavior, or even more importantly, how you take in your own experience. Because an easy example of that would be, you go back to your dwellings. When we're back at our dwellings, how do we behave? Is it different? Do we behave differently when we're alone? And for some of us, myself, very much can say, yeah, that's an effect that's there. If one of the practices we have when we walk into our dwellings is we try to be mindful with, for example, where we put our bag down or our things, careful with how we put them down, and then the immediate next step is to bow down into the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. And sometimes that can just be perfunctory. There's just not much kind of effort put in terms of being mindful or caring of it. Some people can do it just because that's what you do. And others don't do it at all. And then, there's just usually something in between those. But if, for example, one does that, externally, when you're outside your dwelling, and you know the encouragement in this monastery is to do it when you go to your dwelling. Sometimes I can see, for example, in myself that I'm very apt to make sure that I'm bowing 3 times, I'm cognizant of it. But in the kuti, it's not always there. And when I see another monk do that, it's quite inspiring. It's quite inspiring to just see the constant and just like that developed behavior of just this is what you do. You come into your dwelling and you bow down. You leave your dwelling, you bow down. Before you sit for meditation, you bow down. And so often people think, well, I don't want to bow down, or I don't find that helpful. Well, there's no requirement to do it, but I'd say if one is following the Buddha's teachings, there's a requirement to look into why. What's the experience around that, the resistance to it. So I think that's an important aspect when one is alone, to really look at how we behave differently and what that's really about, because we might think, there might be something in our mind thinking, oh, well, obviously there's no one there watching, so I don't have as strong a feeling of needing to impress anyone, or I can kind of let it all hang out, don't have to worry. Feels better, not so much pressure. But there's somebody watching. There's someone watching you. It's yourself. You get to see your own behavior. You can't really ignore it. Especially in the context of being in a monastery. So the weasel mind gets seen. Kind of the mind of wanting to get away with something, or feeling you can get what you want. And it takes some effort to go against that. It's not easy. I definitely see that in myself. It's much easier to give in to our wants and our pleasures. It's much easier to give in to our aversions, our rants, to kind of have this group of people that we like and this other group of people that we don't like. It doesn't take much effort. But what does take effort is when we go in the opposite direction and do something like spend some time with somebody who we don't really like spending time with. Or in a situation where you want to spend time with somebody, you go against that. Not because that's necessarily unwholesome, but you just experiment with it. Well, what's it like if I go against that preference? And so we have so many opportunities to kind of work with this. Our days are the days and nights. They're not just relentlessly passing, but they are filled with a fair amount of space as well. So it's not just relentless passing of time. It's also that we have an opportunity. We can use that, and so that reflection is helpful. But it's also helpful to know, wow, the afternoons are just wide open, and for example, those people who want to stay up tonight, it's another opportunity. So it's for practicing the Buddhist teachings, it's really moving in the direction that a life that is well lived is a life that is examined, where one puts effort into really trying to see what it is that I can do that's going to create wholesomeness in the world, goodness in the world, goodness for others, and what that does is it brings goodness for myself. And what we need to do is just open our eyes and see clearly. When Prabhasno was giving a short reflection to the monks, novices and anagarkas, and he this was at our Patimokkha, and he said it's the two words I remember I pulled out of that was knowing and understanding. So knowing implies that there's an actual clear sense, oh, this is what is actually happening. This is what is happening right now. So we can say that's something like sampajanya. Clear knowing, clear seeing. But then it's not just knowing what's going on right now, because you could say, oh, my right hand is lifting up and down. But it's an understanding. We have to seek understanding. We have to try to understand what it is that we're doing, why we're doing it, how could it be helpful to do something in a different way, to work with our minds in a different way. So for myself, that other reflection that poor Jimnian's primary student was teaching was around. He said, you can't stay, and you can go or you can stay, but you can't do both. And so that's just a particular teaching that I felt was quite helpful to me personally, because there can be, for example, a sense of wanting to do both, and I see that more in terms of like that first reflection. I am no longer living according to worldly aims and values. And in, I think, the Buddha's closer words, he was talking about the culture at the time around caste, not living according to caste. Or we can say that in terms of basically our past, what it is that we were in our past. Not just our class or our cultural identity. When we think about our aims and values are very different. And so we're going against very worldly ways. And that's what I think his teaching was to me, was to say, well, you can go towards the world, or you can move away from it. And he didn't just mean you can not be a monk or you can be a monk. I think his teaching to me was, you have to make a choice even if you are a monk, even if you are a lay practitioner, a nun. It doesn't really matter. You're making a choice. Are you moving towards the world, or are you moving towards the Dhamma? And it's not a life well lived doing both, I think, in terms of when we think about the worldly ways that are unwholesome, that are, we think about seeking praise, avoiding blame, the worldly winds tending towards pleasure and away from pain, towards fame and away from disrepute. These are things that are not helpful, but it's just a very common thing that this is where the mind tends to go. That's the world. And so when we step outside of that, we're moving towards something very different. We're seeing that there is pain, there is difficulty, and there is dukkha, and there is the dukkha that leads to the end of dukkha. There is, this path is not easy. It can be quite difficult, but we have the chance to use that difficulty to come to a clear understanding. A clear understanding of dukkha and how we're causing it for ourselves. And in the beginning of the talk, I was kind of comparing the sense of what it means to have a self-referential understanding of avoiding our fears that we're going to be judged by others, thought of in just an unbeautiful way. And that is a very worldly standard. It's the sort of the way the world works. This seems to be such a very strong thing for people. And we can imagine that we are often pretty much bound to others in that same way. That we every single person you meet really is afraid of being embarrassed or judged. Is afraid of looking poorly or being wrong, failing. It's just, I think, a common experience in most people. And yet often we think we're the only ones who feel this way, especially when these things do occur. And I think I've given this example before, but it was just so poignant to me in my life, my early life as a monastic. I was Nanagarika, and I'd made some. Pardon me if you've already heard this story, but I was making oatmeal a lot, and one of the fellows. His name was Jay. He lived across the street, and he often came to help out. And I was lamenting that there's always this extra dessert. We always have a lot of desserts in the monastery. I don't know what to do with them because they seem to come in a lot, and we just can't get through them. And he said, "Well, why don't you just put all the oatmeal cookies in the oatmeal?" And then this light bulb went off. I said, "Oh, why don't I just put all of the desserts in the oatmeal?" And so I started to do that, and I think. There's someone in this room actually who didn't like that very much and would ask to go make their own oatmeal. But and I noticed that I didn't notice. I intentionally gave the monks the fresh oatmeal so that if there was any complaint, it wouldn't be coming from them. Anyway, there was a complaint, a very strong one that came to me from. Actually one of the novices at the time. And so he said to me, is this that really disgusting oatmeal that you've made the same as yesterday, that just horribly sweet stuff? And he said it in front of about 10, 15 people. And I was just horrified. I mean, my heart started beating, and the adrenaline was flowing, and I was just, completely embarrassed. And I just said, and on that particular day, it wasn't. I don't think there were any, I don't know, maybe there weren't. I'd gone through all the desserts or something. And I just said, no, this is just regular oatmeal. It's just normal. And I just kind of got something for myself, some oatmeal, and then went to the other room. And I was, you've probably all felt this. It's just incredible embarrassment and fear, and everyone in the room just thinks I'm a complete idiot, and everyone hates my oatmeal, and all the suffering that comes along with just a very minor incident. And this fellow named Danny, who at the time was a frequent visitor to the monastery, he came up to me, and he either sat down next to me or was standing behind me, and he said, "Oh, that was amazing." And I looked at him with this perplexed view on my face. I don't understand what was amazing. And he said, "You didn't respond." And I just thought, I'm completely embarrassed. I don't see how that, that I felt like I just looked like a complete idiot in front of all these people. And what was amazing was that I didn't find that there was any skill in not responding. I think I was just too embarrassed to respond. But that one can hold in that moment just a sense of like my own belief and thought process that I know the minds of everyone in that room, and everyone thinks I'm just, this idiot who makes this horrible oatmeal and, whatever. I don't remember what my thoughts were, but, and it just wasn't necessarily true. In fact, I think in those kind of situations that I've been in, then what I often think is, oh, well, if it's unwholesome, I think I'm glad I'm not him. I didn't get that kind of feedback. But if it's more of a sense of compassion, usually, that arises, that's wholesome, like, oh, that must have been a fair amount of suffering to be called out like that. And often there's also like, oh, that's kind of unfair. That's not really nice. Or seeing that the other person's behavior was just quite uncalled for. And how just easy it is for us to construct these sankharas, these formations that we create in our minds that say, oh, this is the way it is. This is how we're being perceived by other people. And the irony in that situation was that I thought something was quite unbeautiful in my own behavior, and it was seen as beautiful in another person. And I've reflected on that very process as well, in that situation, I don't think that there was a cognizance of not responding. But when I have done that, for example, that's been, it's had amazing effects. And the Buddha teaches that. That's one of the teachings he has in the Dhammapada. When you're struck by someone's words, you can be like a broken gong or a broken bell. And you think, that doesn't sound very nice. But a broken bell has no resounding. It gets struck, and I've actually struck a broken bell. It's incredible. Huge bell, and you strike it, and there's nothing. There's no sound. And it doesn't make sense. How can it not make a sound? There's nothing there. And so we can do that when it's helpful. We find it helpful when we have enough mindfulness and clarity. We see, oh, this is a more beautiful way to respond to another person, and then is by not responding. It's just one of the ways that the Buddha points out, oh, this is how beautiful behavior can be for yourself. Others can see it. So if we're able to open our eyes clearly and see our own foibles as they're just temporary things, or anything if we put an effort into, we can drop these habits that we have. We can make them good. It's Lumpur Cha's saying that's so incredibly beautiful. And it's not coming to me right now. Something like, if you make it good, what is it, Lumpur? Anybody? You have something and it's not good, then make it good. If it doesn't, it's die. I can't put it together right now, but that's okay. I'm not going to be too embarrassed about it. Just for a moment, I hope.
If it's not good, let it die. If it doesn't die, make it good.
Make it good. There you go. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your courage in speaking out. But that's it, isn't it? That's the kind of the moment there. It's like, the moment I look stupid, I don't remember the saying that I brought up. And I can believe that. I can go with it. And I can be afraid and think, how could I forget something so simple? It's like on my work shirt, actually. I see it every few days. but it's just, a lot of it, if we think about the moments that we do engage in kind of this self-belief around our own, the way we think we're seen by others, it's just so deluding, and so it's more, I think it's just more helpful to say, well, it's not that important around whether I'm embarrassed or not, or I have some sort of perception around how others see me in terms of my own importance or how I look. But actually, like, how are we benefiting others? How are we benefiting ourselves through benefiting others? But of course, just by doing good, by engaging in the wholesome, we see just how helpful it is in terms of calming our own minds, moving our minds towards what is good, what is helpful. And again, it's not easy because the weasel mind, a mind bound by delusion and Mara, it's very hard to see sometimes for ourselves. When that aversion just rises up very strongly, or that embarrassment or that difficulty, oh man, it's just so hard to see. It's so hard to put down in that moment. But it's okay. I mean, it's all right when we go through that. Then we can take some time to think clearly later, or just some time to be a little bit by ourselves and allow the mind to calm. And then we don't have to make a self out of it. You don't have to take it so personally. And we just keep engaging with it again. Just start anew a moment later. So we, if it isn't, if it doesn't die, then we have the ability to make it good. And it seems to be most of the process of what we're doing, because it's so hard to let go for a long time. And so we can make a commitment towards that. We can make a sense of determination around our own behavior and what it is that we're capable of doing, and also an allowance for so many mistakes to be made. Lumpur Sucitto has this constant phrase that he's bringing up around, if you say that you don't want to make mistakes, or you want to be incapable of making mistakes, then you're basically saying you're incapable of learning, because you can't learn if you aren't willing to make mistakes. That's very profound if you think about it, if you really turn that over in your mind. If you're not willing to make mistakes, to be embarrassed, to look stupid, to say the wrong thing, then how can you possibly learn? It is better to be silent and thought a fool than speak up and remove all doubt. So that's Abraham Lincoln. And there's some wisdom in that, because he does say it's better to be thought a fool. But if you don't speak up, if you're not willing to put yourself out there, then it isn't possible to learn from our foibles. And so removing all doubt is fine. I mean, whatever people think, it's actually okay in the end. And yet you try to still increase that wholesome and encourage others through your own behavior, even though we can't control the reactions of how people really see us. There's a beautiful part of in this book, The Old Man and the Sea, Hemingway, and there's a point where this very old man who owns this boat has an anchor in his boat, and he's moored the boat, and he's with his younger friend, and he says, let's take the anchor out. He says, oh, it's kind of a heavy anchor, and it's a bit of effort. They want to take it out and put it somewhere safe. And he says, well, I mean, do you really think, I mean, it's worth it? I mean, it's gonna, like, you think somebody's going to really steal it? And the old man, his concern wasn't about losing the anchor. His concern was about tempting someone to steal. And so if we, take a page from that book, our concern can really be about, sometimes it can be helpful to reflect when we want to do something that is in our we'll just kind of get what we want. It's sometimes helpful to really bring up that same idea. I wouldn't want to tempt anybody. I wouldn't want to lead them down the wrong direction. And even if nobody sees you or sees this sort of change in habit, even just that mindset of being concerned for how others might be influenced by you, it's quite a beautiful way of thinking. And so that old story in the Bible with Cain and Abel, that sense of like, am I my brother's keeper? You can say, well, yeah, you are. You're. It's important to look after others, but you do that by looking after yourself. And by looking after yourself, is the really excellent story that the Buddha tells with the master acrobat and his assistant. When you look after yourself, you're looking after others. But he also does talk about how you look after others as well, by not just looking only after yourself. You help other people, you guard them, you try to do good things for them, and then that also helps you. So it just goes around and around in these spirals. So I think if I could have told myself when I was much younger, like 14, 15 years old, whatever it was, some of these things, that would have probably opened the door a bit, rather than more coming from a sense of self-concern. Why should I care about what others think of me? And so we can learn over I think a long period of time. It can take a long time. Just we can't control the perceptions of others, but we can try in our intentions to make everyone see our tiger as beautiful. And in so doing, that just brings wholesome action after wholesome action. And it allows our minds to be experience states without remorse, without fear, because we're aiming towards the wholesome. So if there's anything I've said tonight that's been useful, then please take it with you, and anything that hasn't been useful, then please leave it behind. You want